dear community, and welcome back to Espresso Talk Today, where we confront the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces. I'm Amma Robin, Black empowerment educator and your host of the show. Today, we're diving deeper into a conversation that sparked a lot of questions, a lot of emotions, and frankly, some much needed introspection. I know some of you might be wondering, why are we still talking about this? Why are we still dissecting the ways white people are socialized into racism? Well, let me tell you exactly why. First and foremost, we are still talking about this because it's not over. Racism is not a relic of the past that we can conveniently forget or gloss over. It's alive and well, woven into the fabric of our daily lives, our institutions, and even into the well-meaning actions and words of people who genuinely consider themselves to be allies. And to my Black listeners, I know this is a reality that you live every day, just like I do. But this conversation is just as important for you and me because it's about validation and empowerment. And it's about naming the behaviors that have caused pain, frustration, and exhaustion for far too long. Now, to my white listeners, white allies, I repeat, this is not about blame or guilt. It's about responsibility and growth. It's about understanding that racism isn't just about burning crosses or hurling slurs. It's about the subtle, insidious actions, the so-called little things, that perpetuate the very systems that you claim to oppose. We're still talking about this because these behaviors, whether intentional or not or conscious or not, still inflict harm. And if we want to create real change, we need to confront them head on. So if you've ever wondered why this conversation just keeps coming up and it just won't go away, it's because the work isn't finished. It's because every time we peel back another layer, we uncover more truths that need to be addressed. And it's because until we are all committed to doing the hard and uncomfortable work of learning and unlearning and relearning, we're just not going to move forward. And it is time to go forward today, here, right now. I'm ready, and I know you are too. I am having my turmeric pepper coffee for today's uncommon show. And so grab your espresso, sit back, and close that door behind you. We're going to get deep, and we're going to get real. And I hope that y'all are ready for this. Akwaba, welcome, my dear brothers and sisters, and my beloved gender-neutral and gender-nonconforming folks. I am so glad that we are all here together today. This is a real community. In today's episode, I'm going to respond to your questions about racist behavior. We're going to dive deeper into the specifics, and we're going to keep this conversation alive. Not because it's easy, because it ain't, but because it's necessary. Whether you're here to learn, challenge yourself, or find the words for what you've always known but couldn't quite articulate, this episode is for you. So let's keep going, let's keep talking, and let's keep pushing forward towards change. That is really what we need. I hope that you have your espresso. Let's get into it. In a previous episode of Espresso Talk Today, I discussed 20 behaviors that white people do that they don't know are racist. You sent your questions asking how can this particular behavior be racist? And what is a better or anti-racist behavior or anti-racist response? And how can we work against racism? I'm going to respond to that last one towards the end. Now, I'm going to answer these questions, but I won't discuss all 20 behaviors. We'll only discuss 3, but we're going to go into them a little more deeply, so this can give you more information and understanding of how racist behaviors, consciously or unconsciously, happen, and how you can be on the side of anti-racism rather than continuing to contribute to the problem. The 3 behaviors that we will discuss today are: number 1, denying that racism exists; number 2, stereotyping; and number 3, ignoring white privilege. Let's get going. Number 1, racism denial, one of my personal favorites. Denying racism, claiming that racism is a thing of the past or that it doesn't exist in certain contexts, thereby ignoring the ongoing and systemic nature of racial discrimination. Well, let's discuss a scenario. And I'm choosing only real life scenarios here. So I hope that you're in for this too. I hope that you're settled in. Okay, imagine a workplace where a discussion arises about the lack of diversity in leadership roles. A Black employee shares their experience of feeling overlooked for promotions despite their qualifications. In response, a white colleague says, "I don't think that's racism. I don't think racism is really the issue here, and I don't think it's really an issue anymore. We've made a lot of progress, and I don't see color. I treat everyone equally." Ooh, bad response. Wow. Just remembering that situation just makes me shiver. I hear that so much, and I have a feeling that you do too. And maybe you even said it. But, like I said, no shaming or blaming here. We're here to learn and relearn and unlearn. Okay, so let's consider, why is this behavior racist? Well, because denying the existence of racism, especially in response to someone sharing their lived experience, dismisses the reality that racism is still very much alive and it still impacts people daily. When white people claim that racism is a thing of the past, they ignore the systemic inequalities that persist in various forms, such as hiring practices, policing, and educational opportunities. This denial invalidates the experiences of people of color, particularly Black people, and perpetuates the very systems that uphold the racial disparities. Yeah, because we're no longer discussing the issue now. Now we're arguing about something else. Now it's just been put to rest that we're in this post-racial society when all of us know that we aren't. Now, there is a better way this could have been handled. And we're going to discuss that with each one of these scenarios. In this scenario, instead of denying racism, white people could acknowledge that racism still exists and impacts people's lives in different ways. They can listen and validate. When someone shares their experiences with racism, just listen without interrupting or dismissing them. You don't walk in their shoes. You have no idea what they're going through. Educate yourself. Learn about the history and about the racism and how it continues to manifest today. It's not hard to get the information. And this includes understanding how systemic racism operates in various situations. Another one is to recognize that there are racial biases. We're recognizing that there are gender biases. Why is it so hard to recognize that there are racial biases too? So be aware of how racial biases may influence decisions and interactions, even unconsciously. Reflect on how denying racism might be a defense mechanism to avoid uncomfortable truths about privilege. Yep, we're going to get to that. Okay, you can also support anti-racism efforts, activism. You learn so much in that. You get so much more from it than you put into it. I mean, than you do. And yeah, it's a great way to learn. So support anti-racism efforts, and that'll make a difference for them too. And also be open to engaging in constructive dialogue. That's listening. First and foremost, listening. So be open to discussing race and racism with others, even when it's uncomfortable. But listen, please, listen more than you talk. Use these conversations as opportunities to grow and learn. That's what the point is here. That's what we're doing here, right? So, by actually then acknowledging the existence of racism and taking steps to address it, and taking steps, within yourself and with the community at large, white allies can contribute to creating a more equitable and just society, rather than perpetuating the harmful denial that racism is no longer a problem. Let's just drop the post-racial stuff. It ain't true. We all know it. Wow, that was a lot, huh? So let's take our first breather break here. This gives both of us a chance to breathe for a minute, because when things get intense and they get difficult, they get uncomfortable, breathing is a great antidote. It's a great way to handle it. I hope you feel that way too. I will see you in a minute, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy this song that you all know that I just love.
Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and by my nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles.
Aquaba back, dear community. I'm so glad that you stuck around. This is Alma Robin, and I am so into this conversation. I'm just ready to dive right on in. The second behavior we're going to discuss today is stereotyping, the big S, that's right. Stereotyping Black people, making assumptions about Black people based on racial stereotypes, such as thinking all Black people are good at sports or have certain musical abilities. And we know that there are a lot of other stereotypes that are just, following us like a cloud. Well, let's look at a scenario. Let's dive deep into some facts here. Imagine a social gathering where people are talking about their hobbies and interests. When it's the Black person's turn to share, a white attendee quickly jumps in and says, "I bet you play basketball, right?" Oh my gosh, like I said, hearing that just makes me cringe. A Black person who actually has no interest in sports feels awkward and stereotyped as the assumption was made purely based on their race. Wow, yeah. Or people thinking, that you can sing, or that you can dance, or there's some other ones too that are more like, or that you're a criminal, or, you're a single mom, or, that there are just so many other stereotypes. There's no point in going all through them. But people accept those stereotypes as facts. And in a way we're socialized to, because we keep hearing about it from so many different sources, from the media, from the educational system, from friends, from family, from advertisements. They all just keep stereotyping us and perpetuating those stereotypes. So yeah, there's a reason why we keep, accepting them as a fact, accepting them as true. But they are not, so we gotta let that go. And that is a form of racism, and you may think, well, it's harmless, nope. No racism is harmless, never, ever. So why is this behavior racist? Because stereotyping Black people by assuming they possess certain traits or abilities based solely on race reduces us down to a set of preconceived notions rather than recognizing our unique abilities. In other words, dehumanizes us. This takes away our individuality and our humanity. And this behavior perpetuates harmful and limiting narratives that have been historically used to justify racial hierarchies, and inequality. When white people make these assumptions, they reinforce the idea that black people are defined by certain characteristics and attributes rather than seeing us as complex, multifaceted individuals, rather than, basically acknowledging our humanity. Additionally, these stereotypes often carry implicit messages about black inferiority. I had to say it. That's right, I'm going to repeat it. These stereotypes often carry implicit messages about black inferiority in areas not associated with the stereotype. For example, assuming all black people are good at sports might also imply that they are less likely to excel in academic or intellectual pursuits. And that is, just deeply demeaning, and it's false. Yeah, didn't think of it that way, right? They're putting all that, so you picture them putting it all out on the court, when maybe they're actually, a journalist or a mathematician or a poet or, something else. Yeah. That's something to think about. Now, of course, we're going to look at some other behavior. What is the preferable behavior in this situation? Instead of stereotyping, white people could strive to see and engage with black people, as people. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that can be done. For instance, you can, 1, avoid making assumptions. Approach each person as an individual with their own interests, talents, and experiences, just like you want to be approached. Avoid making assumptions based on race and instead ask open-ended questions to get to know people better. Challenge stereotypes. Yep, now that's a big deal. Actively challenge and reject racial stereotypes when you encounter them, whether in your own thinking, that's first place, or in the conversations with others. And this includes being mindful of how media and cultural representations might influence your perceptions. Yep, just discussed that. Another one, number 3, educate yourself. Learn about diversity and the richness of the black experiences and culture beyond the stereotypes. You can find there's a whole lot there. Understanding the historical context of these stereotypes can help in recognizing the harmful impact that they make and avoiding them in the future. And I'm telling you, I go to some of these museums with black exhibits and stuff, but I'm seeing more white people there, which I think is fantastic, and really there to learn and to understand and to engage. It's a great feeling. Well, and let's see, respect individuality. I mean, everybody wants that. And as we said the last time too, just have an open dialogue, an inclusive dialogue. Encourage conversations that move beyond stereotypes and allow for a deeper understanding of people's true identities. And frankly, when you're called out on one of these things, don't double down. I know that's what you want to do, but don't double down. Stop, think, and reflect, apologize, understand how offensive and insulting and demeaning it is, and how you wouldn't want to be spoken to in that way. So, we have the dialogue, but as I keep saying, listen more than you talk. And by rejecting stereotypes and treating black people, treating us as the unique people that we are, then our white allies can help to dismantle the harmful narratives that have long been used to justify racial inequality and that have been used, to uphold racial hierarchies. Well, let's move on to the third one. Yes, that's right. We're moving through this pretty fast, I think. But I think we're having a good dialogue here. Ignoring white privilege. Oh boy. Yep, this is getting big here now. Failing to acknowledge the systemic advantages that come with being white and how these advantages impact interactions with people of color is to ignore your white privilege. That's what it is. You're not recognizing that the system is giving you an advantage, and that you have a privilege that is that was taped to you at birth and that you carry through your whole life and that others absolutely do not have and will never have. Let's look at a scenario. Imagine a discussion about career progression at a networking event. These are real life scenarios here. A white attendee says, I worked hard for everything I have. I don't see how race has anything to do with it. A black colleague bravely, and I think this is very courageous, mentions that they face barriers due to their race, including being overlooked for promotions and experiencing microaggressions in the workplace. The white attendee responds with, everyone has obstacles. I just don't believe race plays a role in success. Oh boy, it's one of those all lives matter kind of discussions. But anyway, this white colleague doubled down. This white colleague, I'm sure that they worked very hard for everything that they have. I'm not going to begrudge them that. But black people work very hard too. And it often doesn't end up with the same kind of result. So hard work, is important, but it is not the dispositive factor. Study after study shows that race is often the primary factor in choosing between two candidates who are equally matched, but one is white and one is black. So if you don't recognize that and you start denying it, then really it's not ignoring your white privilege, it's denying it. And that's pretty reprehensible. And let's look at why this behavior is racist. So I'm going to go with that, denying white privilege, promotes the existence of systemic advantages that white people enjoy simply because of their race. This behavior perpetuates the myth of meritocracy, suggesting that everyone starts from the same place and that success is solely the result of individual effort and achievement. Oh, I wish. I'd love to hear those violins. In reality, systemic racism has created significant disparities in opportunities, access, and treatment for people of color, particularly black people. When white people deny their privilege, they fail to recognize how their race has shielded them from many of the obstacles that people of color face daily. This mindset not only invalidates the experiences of black people, but also really hinders meaningful conversations about racial equity and justice. And it's not just the shielded them from the obstacles, it's given them a boost, within the system. So, what could this colleague have said and done instead? What would have been a preferable anti-racist behavior? Let's go into that right now. Instead of denying white privilege, the white people could acknowledge and reflect on how it affects their lives and the lives of others. One is to acknowledge the privilege. Recognize that being white comes with systemic advantages, such as better access to quality education, housing, and employment opportunities, as well as protection from racial profiling and discrimination. Oh, this one keeps coming back. Listen, and learn. When people of color share their experiences with racism, listen without dismissing or minimizing their perspectives. Understand that experiences with systemic barriers are real and often very different from your own. They are absolutely real. We've discussed that a lot on this show. Okay, let's see. Reflect on personal experiences. Getting personal here. Reflect on how your race has influenced your opportunities and successes. Consider how your experiences might have been different if you were a person of color facing the same challenges. Okay, then you can actually use your privilege. Use your privilege for good. Use your white privilege to advocate for racial equity by supporting policies and initiatives that address systemic racism. Yes, so now you're taking something negative and turning it into a positive. This includes speaking up in situations where people of color may be marginalized or overlooked. That takes courage. We're going to get to that in a minute. And also engage in anti-racism work. As I said, activism always just builds you up. By acknowledging and addressing white privilege, white allies can contribute to creating a more just and equitable society where our opportunities and outcomes are not determined by race. But there may be times when they're going to have to reject that privilege. And I know I believe, because I wouldn't know, I believe that's a very difficult thing to do. But that's where the 3 C's come in. We can get to that in a minute. Don't want to jump ahead. Okay. Well, I just have to bring up this other issue. I know I said there were only going to be 3, but, another one came up and that I thought about it, and I just feel like I need to discuss it. So, I hope you show me a little bit of patience, a little bit of grace, and let's discuss this one because it's really, really important. Get settled for this. Claiming reverse racism. Ooh, were you ready for that? Believing that affirmative action or diversity initiatives are unfair to white people. That ignores the historical and the systemic disadvantages faced by people of color. That's right. And I know a lot of white men are out there talking about how difficult it is for them now. How, it's so difficult. Everybody has it so easy, but they're the weak people in the room. Data doesn't prove that. Not a fact. Let's look at a scenario. Imagine a workplace where a new diversity initiative is implemented to ensure that hiring practices are more inclusive and that the workforce better reflects the community's racial diversity. As a result, a position is filled by a qualified candidate of color. A white employee, feeling that they were equally qualified, complains that the decision was unfair and that the company is practicing reverse racism by prioritizing race over merit. But see, that's the thing. They're equally qualified. So, the merit, they both have the same kind of merit. But they made a choice to try to make the workplace look like the community around it. And that's generally not what some white people want. They don't want to give up any of their privilege, not one bit of it, in order to make life better for anyone else. Why is this behavior so racist? It's kind of reprehensible, which is also racist. Claiming reverse racism in this context ignores the long history of racial discrimination that has systematically excluded people of color from opportunities. Affirmative action and diversity initiatives are designed to address these inequities by leveling the playing field, not by giving undue advantage to any one group. That's what white privilege is. When white people claim reverse racism, they fail to acknowledge the privileges they've historically benefited from and how systemic racism has disadvantaged people of color for generations. Moreover, this claim perpetuates the myth that equality for people of color somehow takes something away from white people, when in reality, it aims to correct historic and ongoing injustices. It also dismisses the significant barriers that people of color continue to face, such as implicit bias, underrepresentation, and a lack of access to networks and resources that have always been more readily available to white people. So, what would have been a better behavior, a better response, something anti-racist in response to, this DEI initiative? Instead of claiming reverse racism, white people could seek to understand the purpose and importance of affirmative action and diversity initiatives. They can, it begins with this, educate themselves, learn about the history and the ongoing impact of systemic racism and how these initiatives are part of the effort to create a more just and equitable society. Now, perhaps, and probably, of course, these people currently did not create the system that we have now. None of us did, but yet we all have to live in it. And it's time for all of us to be able to live in it fairly and equitably. Another thing to do is to support inclusivity, recognize the value of a diverse and inclusive environment, and advocate for policies that promote equity. That's a big one. That's a big call. I know theoretically it all sounds great, but when it comes to maybe you don't get the job that you want, that you feel your privilege should have given you, I can see how you don't want to go for that. Yeah, and up to that, reflect on your privilege. Acknowledge that the privileges that have historically benefited white people, and consider how these privileges may have influenced your own opportunities and successes, and how that has disadvantaged others for generations. And then celebrate diversity. Of course, we want to do that. By adopting these behaviors, white allies can contribute to dismantling systemic racism rather than perpetuating the false notion of reverse racism, because that is just false. That's a lie. So, wow, that was a lot there. I know I said it was only going to be 3s. I've added 4. I'm not going to add in any more, but I felt it was important to discuss that one. So let's take another breather break here. Let's breathe, think, stretch, do push-ups, grab some coffee or tea, whatever speaks to your soul. This is some great stuff here, but we all need a short break. When we return, we're going to discuss 3 things that you can do to fight racism. This is real anti-racism mindset stuff here. I call them the 3 C's. I'll return in a minute.
Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and by my nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible.
Welcome back, community. Aquaba back. I am so glad that you're here. And I'm so glad that, you're staying open to learning and unlearning and relearning so that we can do all of this together. Well, now here are some 3 steps that are going to really empower you as an ally. And I call them the 3 C's. I'm just going to talk about it real quickly because I discussed this in some other podcast episodes and on the website, but I'm just going to mention it. 1, display courage. It takes courage to confront racism, especially within yourself and your community. And this means being brave enough to look inward and acknowledge your own biases and prejudices. Start by educating yourself, as I said earlier, and try to understand that racism is not just about individual actions, but it's a whole structure and a system and a machinery that is being fueled and fed, every day, and it upholds white supremacy. Time for it to go. So when you encounter racist jokes or comments, whether in a social setting or at work, speak out against them. It might feel uncomfortable, but this is what courage is. It might feel uncomfortable, but silence can be interpreted as agreement. Use these moments as opportunities to educate others too. Challenge discriminatory practices in your workplace. I know that you know that you can identify it in your schools or in your communities. And advocate for policies that promote equity and inclusion, and that just frankly help people. Be prepared to have difficult conversations with friends and family and colleagues. Growth does often come from discomfort, so that's why I'm saying courage. Courage is number 1. Number 2 is character. Show character. This journey requires integrity and accountability. Admitting when you are wrong is a sign of strength. Absolutely. If you make a mistake, or realize that you've acted in a way that perpetuates racism, apologize. Acknowledge the impact of your actions. Commit to doing better. Continuous learning and unlearning are essential. Racism is so deeply ingrained in our society, and undoing those beliefs is going to take time and it's going to take effort. Now, it doesn't take perfection, but it takes persistence. Engage with books, articles, podcasts, and films that explore racism and the Black experience. And participate in workshops and training sessions. Those are so helpful. Okay, and hold yourself accountable. Ooh, yep, that's right. character requires accountability. Be open to feedback. And number 3, express compassion. Nothing beats compassion. Listening to Black voices is crucial. Truly listen without interrupting or dismissing. Remember I said that about talking over people. Understand that these experiences are valid, even if they make you uncomfortable or they challenge your worldview. Create spaces and support spaces where Black people feel safe to share their stories and perspectives. And I talked about Black spaces before. Understand sometimes you're not going to be welcome into those spaces. That's not about excluding or racism against you. It's about having a space where people can speak freely and with comfort and know that they're not going to be judged. But you can use your privilege to amplify Black voices. And this can mean sharing the stories on social media, promoting Black-led initiatives, and supporting Black-owned businesses. Not hard to do. Just don't try to take the lead on everything, okay? Be willing to follow and to learn and to listen, and to stand in solidarity with Black people during protests and advocacy efforts. Offer your resources, whether it's time, money, or connections, to support causes that fight for racial justice, and show compassion by recognizing the emotional toll that racism takes on Black people and offering support and solidarity. By displaying courage, by showing character and expressing compassion, you can be a genuine ally in the fight against racism. You can be a real anti-racist ally. These steps require ongoing commitment and effort, but they are critical in creating a more just and equitable society. As I said, perfection is not required, but persistence is. Let's take one last breather break here. Then we're going to start to wind it down. Has been, I admit, a little uncomfortable. It's been intense, but it's been uplifting too. We're going to switch gears now a bit and discuss one more anti-racism step that you can take, and it's an important one. Winding it down here, and I am so grateful, so incredibly grateful that you are sticking here with me. Well, this last important anti-racism step I want to mention to you is a 4th C. It is celebrating Blackness. Remember that Blackness is not just solely defined by pain and struggle. It's also about joy and success and community, love, culture, and a rich history. Celebrate Black achievements and culture. Learn about the contributions of Black people throughout history and today. This holistic understanding fosters genuine respect and solidarity. You'll never be the same, really. Now I have one last thing I want to present to you. It's a gift, and I hope you consider it as such. It is called the Socialized Racism Scale. The Socialized Racism Scale, I created it myself, is a self-assessment tool designed to help white people recognize and reflect on the unconscious biases and behaviors that contribute to systemic racism. While many white people strive to be allies, socialization is in a society that upholds white supremacy can lead to ingrained, often unnoticed and unconscious racist behaviors. This scale encourages honest introspection by asking questions that reveal how deeply these biases are embedded in one's thoughts and actions. By taking the Socialized Racism Scale, white allies can gain a clearer understanding of their level of unconscious racism, how their everyday actions, beliefs, and assumptions might perpetuate racial inequities, even if they don't intend to do harm. The scale is not about assigning guilt or blame or shame. Rather, it's a tool for growth and self-awareness. Understanding where you stand on the scale can allow you to Identify specific areas where you can improve, guiding you towards more conscious and equitable behaviors. The ultimate goal is to move from unawareness to active anti-racism, where white allies can contribute meaningfully to dismantling the systemic racism that affects people of color. By using this socialized racism scale, white people can begin to understand the nuances of their own socialization, challenge their ingrained biases, and commit to ongoing learning and action in the fight against racism. I developed the scale myself, as I said, and I think that you will find it helpful. It's 15 questions, and it presents common scenarios and asks how you might respond in them. Then it gives you an assessment of your level of socialized racism and makes suggestions to help you improve, which is why you're here, so I appreciate that. So remember, courage, character, compassion, and of course, celebrate. I think it is time to wind it down now. That's all I got for today. Asante Sana family for joining me on this special episode of Espresso Talk Today. Let's keep this conversation going. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And let's work together to fight racism anywhere and everywhere we find it, and with whomever we find it. No exceptions, no excuses. And if you found this episode meaningful and helpful, please share it with your friends, your family, your community, your tribe, anyone in your community. And let's spread the word and inspire others to take action. Asante Sana to all people working for the liberation of oppressed people. I stand in solidarity with you. And so remember, my fellow warriors, know this deep in your soul. You are powerful beyond measure. And together, we are invincible. And the real problems with society are racism and white supremacy. I'm going to say it, Black people are not the problem. If you want to keep discussing or reading about these issues, then I would love for you to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Nomo Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there. Get your dose of Black empowerment and liberation every week. It's never a dull moment, lots of powerful, uplifting, and liberating moments. You can subscribe at the Espresso Talk Today website at espressotalktoday.com or on Instagram at Ama Robin L. That's AMA_Robin_ the letter L. You can also find us on Facebook in our newly opened Espresso Talk Today Black Liberation Lounge. This group is a safe space for us to hold discussions, share thoughts and ideas, feel joy, express sadness, or just belong. You can join us on Instagram, and I hope you do, where I hold a live discussion every week, usually on Thursdays. So DM me to get the weekly schedule. Join me on Instagram at Ama Robin L. I'm Ama Robin for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe, community.